Hello and welcome to Scran, the podcast passionate about the Scottish food and drink scene. I'm your host, Rosalind Erskine, and on one Tuesday this summer, when the sun was splitting the stones in Glasgow, I boarded a plane to Orkney. Dear listener, the weather was much more temperate in Kirkwall, but what I discovered was a truly fascinating world of food and drink which made me quickly forget about the sun I was missing back home. On this Scran on the Road special, producer Kelly and I spent 2 days travelling around Orkney thanks to Orkney Marketing and Orkney.com, where we encountered so many interesting people and places we couldn't squeeze it into one episode. This is part 1, which brings you first an insight into a modern business with Colin, the founder of J Gow Rum, and then a 4 generations old family business when I speak to Stewart Crichton, MD of Stockans Oatcakes. Colin is also chair of Orkney Food and Drink. He tells me all about his role and the challenges they need to surmount as an island business and community. He shares his passion for distilling rum and the pirate inspiration that has informed its branding and marketing.
Everything food and drink wise that's made here is just of a very high quality. If you're into seafood, we've got that. If you're into cheese, we've got it. Whiskey, gin, rum, beer, we have it all. The restaurants are just absolutely fantastic. You can pretty much find anything you want these days.
Stewart describes the rich history of Stockans oatcakes and how this iconic Scottish triangular oatcake came about. He also suggests ways to serve your oatcakes, which may raise an eyebrow or two.
Form it into a ball, push that ball down on their targe or their shield and bake it over a fire so you got a flat circle that was then cut into 4. And that's how we get our triangular shape of our oatcake.
Hello!
Hi!
That is potent, isn't it? Yeah.
I'm Colin from J Gow Rum, and I'm the chairman of Orkney Food and Drink.
Hi Colin. Before we get into talking about rum, because I should say we're standing here in the distillery and it smells amazing, do you want to tell us a little bit about your role as chairman for Orkney Food and Drink, how long you've been doing it and what all that kind of entails?
Yeah, I've been a member of Orkney Food and Drink since as long as I've been doing the rum, so about 9 years now. I've only been the chairman for the last year. I can't really take credit for much of the work, to be honest, because it's Kerry Leask, the head of Orkney Food and Drink, that does most of the work.
So why did you decide to join it and what kind of benefits have you seen from it?
I joined because we get the benefit of going down to big shows and presenting Orkney as one united front. It not only saves money when we're shipping stuff down to these big shows, but it just means you have a much bigger space than you could ever have on your own. And the Orkney name just really carries itself all over the UK. So it's something people look out for when they go to shows. And another thing was just the collaborating with businesses, bouncing ideas around, sharing contacts, just helping each other out in any way we can. I think there's been 3 or 4 collaborations that have happened between ourselves and other businesses just because we're members of Orkney Food and Drink. So that's new products and all sorts of other things. So
You've unlocked a memory there. We'd have seen you at the Royal Highland show, is that right? Because we were there doing a media thing a few years ago.
Yeah, I've been every year except the COVID years. It's my turn to go again this year because I sent my wife and Karen last year to go, but it's my turn to go again this year, so yeah, that's not far away.
So what are the types of things that you have to sort of lobby around or get attention for food and drink businesses on Orkney?
Transport is one of the biggest issues, is trying to secure good transport for all the various different businesses. For example, one of the members wasn't able to get freezer transport, so they had to buy their own freezer van and literally drive south and do their own deliveries because those options just aren't available anymore. And it's obviously getting things up here and then getting things back down. It adds a lot of cost on, but it's sort of part of the fun of living on an island.
So for someone who's never been to Orkney before, what would you say about coming over for the food and drink? Obviously the good rum.
I think everything food and drink wise that's made here is just of a very high quality. If you're into seafood, we've got that. If you're into cheese, we've got it. Whiskey, gin, rum, beer, we have it all. The restaurants are just absolutely fantastic. You can pretty much find anything you want these days.
There's some very cute dogs that are sneezing in the background.
Yeah, that's Lucy. She's the chief cask sniffer / front of house.
Very cute. We're here. It smells amazing. I think last time I was here, we just visited the shop as a visitor. So it's nice to see the production side of things. So do you want to tell us a little bit about your business, your rum business?
My dad's been making fruit wine here for 25 years, and he was trying to get me to take over that side of things, but I ended up stealing half of the building and putting a still in it and making rum instead. It's probably now more 80% of the building than half, but here we are. In 2017, we got the stills and started distilling. We're obviously named after J Gow, who's a pirate from Orkney 300 years ago, quite infamous. A very short, violent career that ended on the Cap of Edie, where he was handed over to the authorities by someone he actually went to school with. And then he was hanged in London twice after the rope snapped the first time. So very brutal, but rum and pirates, there's no escaping it. It's a good story. And 20 years before him, there was actually French pirates that attacked this very island as well, so there is quite a rich history of it in Orkney. It's just not as spoken about as Vikings and things like that. We have a 2,000 litre hybrid pot still, which means there's a column that's mounted directly on top of the still. There's a valve in the middle that controls liquid output, so if we have that open, we're running it like a pot still. So for most of our cask age stuff, we double distill, same as whiskey. You do your strip and run and your spirit run, but for higher ester stuff with the wild yeast or any unaged rums, we close that valve right up and get maximum reflux, so we can take the wash from about 8% to 85% in one go, and you get a much sort of lighter, fruitier spirit. We put both types down in cask. It just gives us more options when it comes to being of age, because we don't 100% know what the 12-year-olds, etc., are going to be like, because we haven't done those yet. But yeah, we have just released our first 8-year-old core range rum, which is bourbon and Madeira casks. So it's a huge weight off my shoulders to finally get that out and get that support in itself, so to speak.
So do you want to tell us about the different expressions of rum?
Yeah, so we started with a spiced rum, which is a dry spiced rum. We only add 5 grams of sugar per litre, so it's not sickly sweet. We have an unaged rum that's 50%. That's the one that we distill to 85% in one go. That's more for daiquiris, mojitos, rum and cokes, that sort of thing. Then we have 2 3-year-olds. One of them's aged in chestnut casks. We were the first in the world to use chestnut for rum. And the other one's more traditional bourbon casks. And then we have the 8-year-old that's done in Madeira casks. And then every year we do a wild yeast expression as well. So we isolate yeast from various flowers and things. Most often it's the northern marsh orchid that grows beside the distillery in sort of end of June, July time. So we swab the petals, put that in sterile wash and try and grow some yeast from it, and then scale that up to ferment rum basically. And you get some really amazing flavours from it that you couldn't create otherwise. And you have unique yeast strains in that nobody else has. So it's really quite cool, and they're different every year.
First ever rum distiller?
In Orkney, yeah.
Not nowhere else.
We were the UK's first 8-year-old rum as well that we brought out in October last year, one of our single cask ones.
Why 8 years old? Was it just because it was the best it could be?
Yeah, it tasted fantastic at 8 years. We'd done the same rum as a 3 and a 5. I think it just sort of completed the series doing it in 8. And that's sort of when the cask really starts to impart the esters and flavours into the spirit. So it's a good age, because obviously it's a bit colder here than the Caribbean, so it takes a wee bit longer.
So where can people get it if they're not visiting here, and what is quite popular from your core range?
The Revenge and the new 8-year-old, like the 3-year-old bourbon cask one and the new 8-year-old Pieces of 8, it's just been ridiculously popular. You can get it online from ourselves or from like Royal Mile Whiskies, Whiskey Exchange, any sort of good independent spirit shop, and also in Denmark and Czech Republic.
So these are, I want to say bourbon, but...
the bulk of them are ex-bourbon, just for convenience. It's a nice flavour it imparts, it works well. All the paler casks are the chestnut ones, the sort of yellowy wood. Then we started using a lot of ex-red wine casks as well, that we take the heads off, scrape down to bare wood and retoast ourselves, sort of like STR, but our own sort of cheap way of doing it. And then we've got some Madeira casks, port casks, ex-Irish whiskey, sherry, all sorts of stuff, so plenty of options.
Ex-Irish whiskey, Kelly.
You can get on board with that.
So is it just you, or do you have people helping you?
On the rum production side of things, I pretty much do 100% of that myself. So that's like fermenting, distilling, all that stuff. But my sister works for me part-time. She helps with bottling, labelling, all that stuff. And Karen runs the shop for me as well. My dad, who's still doing a bit of the wine, is semi-retired, whatever that means. Basically means he's never here. But if he needs to be, he will be here to help with bottling and bigger jobs. So yeah, it's a small team, but it works. So.
And you can tell us a bit about the wine.
Yeah, it's a Orkney wine company. So we do a white wine, a red wine that's 100% Orkney grown. The last batch of white was elderflower and gooseberry, but I think this year it's going to be gorse, gooseberry, and even some Orkney grapes in there that we've managed to grow. And the red is Aronia, which is a berry that grows incredibly well here. And then we do a sort of elderberry port style wine as well that's very popular. The one we have out at the minute's from 2012, so it's got a good bit of age to it.
So what are your plans for the rest of the year?
We've just released our 8-year-old in sort of February, March, so that was the big milestone to get to. And because I thought it was a great idea to do the last 2 years of those in Madeira casks, I now need to keep buying Madeira casks and moving all the 6-year-old into that for the last 2 years. So I'll be doing a lot of that, and we will be planning a new wild yeast release as well, but we're deciding between 2 different cask types which one to release. So that'll be sort of June, July time.
Can we please try some of the rum?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Okay, Colin, so what are we going to try?
Yeah, I'd recommend trying the new 8-year-old. That's definitely the jewel in the crown, I think.
The labels are lovely, and the names. So how'd you come up with the names? Obviously, you've got Pieces of 8, Revenge, Fading Light, and unsurprisingly, something I'm not going to be able to pronounce.
Culverin, it's just a type of cannon. So they're either directly related to the J Gow story, as in the Revenge was the name of his ship, or they're sort of a local thing, or just a general pirate thing, being Pieces of 8. The Fading Light is like the fact that it doesn't get dark in the summer, it never really gets light in the winter. Sort of that dusk here is called the Gremlins. But I didn't want to call it that because that'd be another thing people wouldn't be able to pronounce, so we just went with Fading Light. So
Colin, you're a man of many talents. Can you tell us about the artwork on the labels?
Yeah, I draw it all myself, just with pen and paper, and then scan it in and get it in on the computer, and stick it on the label. It's a lot cheaper if you do it yourself, and it means you get 100% control of how you want it to look, basically.
I've also worn my skull top specifically for coming here. Here we go. So it's a really interesting colour. It's kind of, if you didn't know, you think it was quite a strong rosé wine. Yeah,
it gets a real red hue from the Madeira casks, which is quite cool, and it goes with a nice sort of burgundy label as well. 6.5 years in ex-bourbon, and then the last 1.5 years in Madeira casks. I would just suggest drinking this one straight, just as is. You can add ice or whatever, but I think it's 43% already, so it doesn't really need any water.
It does taste good, yeah. Not surprisingly, because that sounds bad, you could easily drink this straight, as in it's dangerous.
Definitely, yeah.
Now come from the distillery into a kind of tasting room, but you're near water and some local landmarks.
Yeah, we're never far from the sea on this island. It's only 0.15 square miles, so there's no avoiding it really. We had to put this extra dike in here to stop the waves coming over and hitting the shop in the winter. We had 3 weeks of easterly gales in the start of the year, and the waves were coming over every day. But it's been a few years since we've had that. The only other things on the island are an airfield, a quarry with a lobster hatchery, and an Italian chapel built by Italian prisoners of war. Which is
one of the landmarks. I suppose if people are coming to visit, they'll come and visit that and then probably come here as well.
Definitely, yeah. That's one of the most famous visit attractions in Orkney. You get a lot of Italians visiting it as well, funnily enough.
Do they like rum?
Most of them do, yeah, so that's fine by me.
So I would happily drink this straight, but I drink whiskey. Would you recommend it in like a cocktail, or are you sort of happy for people just to drink it straight because it's 8 years old?
I'm happy for them to drink it straight, but I've tried it in a few cocktails. Manhattans with Antica vermouth, so a nice sort of sweet red vermouth. Works incredibly well. Any sort of bourbon-led cocktails, you can sub the bourbon out for the rum. Works really well, but just savour it, enjoy it, however you want to drink it.
Well, thank you very much.
No worries.
Like little pizza slices.
Let me just grab that. We can ship to Northern Ireland, yeah. Put it in if you want, and we have some customers in Belfast that we supply. But if you put an order in, I'll make sure that you get it. You know about that? Why not? Somebody from Larne in Northern Ireland. Hi, I'm Stewart Crichton. I'm General Manager and Company Director of Stockans Oatcakes here in Strumness, Orkney.
Hello, Stuart. Thanks for having us today. So, for anyone that doesn't know about your business or the Oatcakes, could you just tell us a little bit about the history? Because I know it's quite a long one.
Yeah, sure. We are a fourth generation family business, been in Orkney from 1908, so long established in various different guises, had operations in Kirkwall. At one point the family had a fairly large conglomerate with businesses in Shetland, Orkney, the Western Isles and in Edinburgh. But now the sole manufacturing business is here in Strumness where we make oatcakes. The business is owned by two sisters and the Archer family. Their great grandfather started up or joined a business in Leith in Edinburgh, which at that point was running flour mills and was supplying groceries and foodstuffs to Orkney, to Shetland, to the north coast. They ran vessels before the roads and the trains were in the Northwest Highlands. They had ships that actually sailed from Leith and gave provisions and went into the small ports along the north coast selling general provisions. And when they came to Orkney, by taking on what was then the firm of Gardens, they had horse-drawn vans going around the countryside where they would have been supplying victuals to farms and taking back eggs and farm produce. And from there developed into general bakers when they were baking products. And again, they would be taking farm produce back and supplying baked products. Business was very active in Orkney in both wars. When there was a lot of troops stationed in Orkney, it was a big time for the business because when there were maybe a population of Orkney at the time of 20,000, but 50,000 troops who all needed to be fed. Business was very, very busy in the war years. Now our sole focus for manufacturing is on oatcakes, and the family has a very, very, very strong tie to Orkney because of its back history.
It's a very particular style of oatcake, so they're the sort of big triangular ones. Is that quite traditional? Is that something that you guys invented, or what's the story behind the sort of shape of the oatcake?
The triangular shape was very traditional because in days of yore, the Highlanders and the Highland clansmen in particular, when they were going reaving or going for conflicts in their sporran, they would have oatmeal, which they would very simply mix with water and maybe a pinch of salt, form it into a ball, push that ball down on their targe or their shield and bake it over a fire. So you got a flat circle that was then cut into four, and that's how we get our triangular shape of our oatcake.
Wow, I did not know that. That's really interesting. So you didn't invent it then?
No, we can't lay claim to it, I'm afraid, but a very old and very traditional way of doing it. And still people who bake at home and make oatcakes would do the same thing. They would form their dough into a ball, push it down flat and cut it into quarters.
So without giving away too many secrets, can you tell us a bit more about the recipe and how you make it?
Very, very traditional, roughly, you could say, and the percentages vary, but roughly our oatcakes are 75% UK whole grain oats, approximately 10% fat or a binding agent. We use a solid vegetable oil, roughly 10% flour, and then a bit of a raisin agent, pinch of salt, pinch of sugar. Very, very much like people would use to bake at home. 85 to 90% of what we make are either a traditional, what we call our thick oat cake, which is made with coarse ground oatmeal. Comes from Aboyne in the north of Scotland. And we pack them 8 in a pack, 200 grams. And then we also make what we call a thin oat cake, which is made with fine ground oatmeal. So again, there's 8 in a pack, but there's only 100 grams. We do additional flavours, and we do mini round oat cakes, and with them we do a cheese oat cake and a black pepper. We do a cheese triangle, and we actually do some ancient grain oat cakes that we do using heritage grains. Some using bare meal from the Barney Mill, where I think you're going to go to. Some using spelt, and we have one with a bit of chilli in it. So yeah, bit of variety, but the bulk of our oatcakes are our thick and our thin traditional.
And with the heritage grain ones, they're relatively new, aren't they? So it's almost like you're diversifying but kind of going back to the past as well because of the heritage grains.
Yeah, and a big part of that from our point of view was our thick and thin oatcakes are available in most supermarket chains in the UK, most retail outlets, and we were trying to develop something that was a little bit more attractive for farm shops, upmarket delis, garden centres where people are looking for things that they don't necessarily get in a supermarket.
And also the heritage grain just now, I know in whisky some distilleries are going back to those like Bear Barley or Golden Promise, and there seems to be a bit of a sort of zeitgeist around it just now, so it's obviously a good time to be introducing that.
Absolutely. We have a small online shop that we run, and our ancient grain are the best-selling oatcakes on our online shop.
So for anyone listening that doesn't really know the sort of tradition around oatcakes, can you sort of explain the tradition around them, what you would eat them with, maybe the time of day you might have them?
A lot of people think of oatcakes just as another savoury biscuit that you would eat normally with a cheese board or with patties, say. But historically, in Scotland in particular, oatcakes were very much a bread substitute. So eaten as a substitute for bread at any time of the day. My father, who is fortunate enough to be hale and hearty at 93, has a thick oatcake with marmalade every morning after his duck egg for breakfast.
It's quite a breakfast. You're obviously here on the island. Whereabouts do you export to, or where are your best sort of markets?
Mainly in the UK, and most of our consumption, I would guess, is in Scotland, but increasingly across the border in England. One of our best customers at the moment, particularly south of the border, is Waitrose, where we're doing very well. But we also export quite a lot. Number of customers in Ireland, both in the north and in Ireland. We export as far away as New Zealand. We just got an order in actually for us from Australia. Usually once a month we're sending to Canada and the US. Historically it would have been expats, I guess, part of the Scottish diaspora, but increasingly our oatcakes, we like to think, are seen as an alternative to other savoury biscuits, not just as a Scottish traditional product. There's a number of advantages they have as a product in terms of export. Long shelf life, we put 8 months on date of production, but that can be increased to 12. We do end-of-life testing to 12, and there's no discernible bacterial depreciation or loss of flavour. So, yeah, they have a long shelf life. They're light in weight, and although we don't like to say too much about it, they're cheap.
So there seems to be like an explosion of savoury biscuits just now. So you go into the supermarket or a deli and there's loads of them, seemingly more so than, say, 5 or 6 years ago. What would you say your point of difference is?
Yeah, I quite agree with you. There's a huge range of crackers and savoury biscuits, rice cakes, sourdough crackers, flatbread. The general savoury biscuit space is very crowded. We like to think we're a wee bit unique in that we're not just an oatcake, but we're a triangular oatcake. And we see that very much as our point of difference. Okay,
so we've got a lot of them here. What's your favourite? Which would you like to start with?
I like the bear meal with cheese and chilli, but perhaps you shouldn't start with that because the other ones may taste a little bit bland. But maybe start with one of our traditional triangles, maybe even the bear meal one, because I know you're going to Barney Mill, so a bear meal triangle.
Very nice.
So with the bear meal, that's the bear that's grown in Orkney and ground at the Barney Mill. It's got quite a nutty savouriness to it. It's slightly different. It's on top of the oats, you get that slight nuttiness, so it makes it a wee bit different.
It tastes, this is probably a daft thing to say, it tastes a bit more like a biscuit. Like I feel like I could, it's like obviously not sweet, but it feels more biscuity than you might be expecting. So that would be what the nuttiness from the barley.
Absolutely. And if you want to take a wee break off of one of our traditional thick oat cake, which we would say was almost the most traditional of what you would expect in an oat cake to be, which is far more grainy and oaty.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you very much. It's been great to chat to you, and thanks for having us today. And it's been lovely to see all the oat cakes, including the ones I'm very familiar with.
Thanks both for coming. You're very welcome. Traditional products, traditionally made, a lot of hand baking skills, but we like to think we're moving with the times and that we've still got a place in the modern world.
Definitely, and I'm going to get some of these and take them home and have some with cheese. Or maybe marmalade.
Yeah, my dad would recommend it. I don't think you should go for the duck egg necessarily.
Thank you. that's not all from Orkney. In the next part of our Scran on the Road special, I'll be visiting Barony Mill, the only place in the world where bare barley is milled. And yes, you guessed it, I visited the hallowed ground of Highland Park to hear all about its recent renovation and to try some of its famed whisky. So listen out for the next episode of Scran on the Road, wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks to my guests for being on this episode, and thanks to you too for listening. Please remember to rate, review and subscribe so you never miss an episode of Scran. Scran is co-produced and hosted by me, Rosalind Erskine, and co-produced, edited and mixed by Kelly Crichton.